The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You are the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Life Today Live. Jordan Brinkschroeder, excited to be back with you guys today. And you know what, I'm just going to start by exposing myself really quickly. When the winter time comes around and we have Thanksgiving, I cannot control myself because it's one of my favorite things to do is eat. And then I keep thinking that I'm going to get back on track. And then Christmas comes. And then I obviously have to partake in that. And then by the time New Year's comes, I have the same resolution as about everybody else on this earth that I am really going to get to the gym and I'm going to finally use the program that I have been paying for and not using. And, it's been year after year and I continue to do it. But after researching our guest for today, I do feel the inspiration to really get on the wagon. And so I know that you're going to feel inspired just as I have. And so today I'm super excited for our author. Her name's Jeanine Amapola Ward, and we are going to go over her book, Becoming Happy and Healthy. Jeanine, thanks so much for being on the program with us today.
Thank you, Jordan, for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and I just love your energy already. And I feel you with the whole Christmas, Thanksgiving thing. We're all in the same struggle bus together.
Girl, I'm glad it's not just me. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where we kind of just silently go about it, but I love it, and I love your energy too, and I just know that today is going to be so much fun. So let's just jump right into it. Have you always kind of been into health, or has this been a journey that you've kind of had to start on and kind of drag yourself along?
Yeah, great question. I would say it started around 2017 when I had gone through a pretty traumatic breakup. I had lost 10 pounds. I was probably the thinnest I ever was, and kind of wanting to it's kind of funny. It came out of a revenge body where I was like, I'm trying to come back better than ever. And I found a gym and they pushed me harder than I had ever been pushed in my life. And next thing I knew, I just began to love the gym, love everything revolving that. And so I started researching more, but then I will say it did become a little bit unhealthy at some point where I ended up having to seek out a nutritionist to help me out. Now I feel like I'm a very good, even keeled level, but it was definitely a journey of highs and lows, learning what worked, what didn't. But I would say I'm now in a very healthy spot with it.
That's so awesome. Do you feel like sometimes it's really hard to have that balance? Because I feel like when we start out and we start learning all of the, nutritional things or how we can push our bodies in new ways, and we see our body reacting and we see the positive, results from it, it's so easy to just go off the deep end. Did you feel like it was kind of hard to find that balance and stay consistent with it in that journey?
Absolutely. And I still think it is something that is very difficult to maintain. I mean, you can fall off one day and then think, well, I already fell off today, so I might as well just fall off again tomorrow.
Right.
And I think the mindset that I try to have is just knowing that yesterday's mistakes doesn't mean you have to continue those mistakes today. So you can still make the right choice today. And so I do feel like it was a lot of trial and error, and also having to kind of not look outward and look a little bit more inward, because I think what was really difficult about the journey is I was trying to make my body work the way that someone else's did. And I had to realize that God wired my body, my genetics, my DNA completely different than someone else's. And so I would be so mad. I'm like, why am I not getting results like her? Why can't I eat the way that she does? And God's like, because I made you for a reason. And so once I figured that out and I worked with my body, I was able to really find the health that I was looking for.
So when 2017, where were you in life? Were you in high school, college, early adult? Where were you?
I had just graduated college. Okay. I had just gotten out of a bad relationship. I had moved back to Dallas. And so I was really just trying to do anything and everything to better myself, to get right back on the right path. And so fitness and my faith were really, really staple in that.
I think it's so interesting because, we're talking about balance, and we think that fitness and faith, those are two huge key things of a Christian life, right? And it's like, if
Yeah.
we're going to go off the deep end, really commit to something, those would be the two things that we want to do. But sometimes it can be destructive, you know, when we kind of go too far in something. But I would really love to back up and just like walk me through this breakup that you went through. That had to have been really tough. You said it was a really, really hard part of your life.
Yes, I actually talk about this in chapter 10 of my book. My chapter is called Secrets because it was a relationship that was a secret. I was with him for 2.5 years and we ended up getting eloped during college. And it was one of the worst decisions I ever made. It was something that I was a little manipulated into doing, and I was very young. I was very naive. I was a senior in college. I had very low self-esteem and had nobody around me helping me make wise decisions, unfortunately. And so this relationship spiraled into one of my worst nightmares, and it was something that I deeply regretted at that time. And now I know that God used it for something greater, and my story is now helping other women become free from abusive relationships. And so it was something that I had to get out of very, very shortly. And my family had to basically pull me out of it to help me get out of it. And so, you know, you could imagine a senior in college trying to finish her degree. I was still doing social media full time at this point and trying to legally deal with this relationship. It was probably one of the worst decisions and the hardest times of my life, because not only that, the internet got brought into it because he, you know, publicly told things about me and our relationship online, and millions of people saw it. And so it was just a whirlwind of many things that I was just like, God, I need you to rescue me from this situation, because I unfortunately got myself into a mess and I was not really walking with the Lord at this time. And so the Lord really helped me. And so when I got back to Dallas and back around my family and good people, I really began my healing journey then. But that relationship was something that I would truly not wish on anybody.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And college is just a hard time, period. And then when you add on all of the other things that you went through, like, you are a strong woman. And thank you just a lot for sharing, because I know, you know, as we kind of bring things out and it's no longer a secret, and that's why I love that you titled it that, then we kind of like find that community and we can help each other and we can learn from each other's wisdom, you know. But you talked that you weren't really walking with the Lord in that time, but you did have the foundation of the Lord, right?
Yes.
And so did you
Yes.
feel any of that conviction when you were going to elope, or when you started that relationship with him? Like, what were your feelings when you were kind of walking through that in secret?
Absolutely. I mean, so I did exactly what you said. I had a foundation of faith. College, I kind of walked away from it, but I always knew that the Lord was there. I always knew that God was pinging me. He was trying to bring me back. I would still listen to worship music occasionally. I would go to church occasionally. I was in a Christian sorority for about a semester, but at one point I felt like I had just dug myself so deep into a mess that I kind of left it all. And then only when I was really, really in that mess is when I was like, okay, God, I've clearly walked away. And like, because I walked away from you and following your instruction and what you deem as best for us and your protection, I'm the one that got myself into this mess. And so, yes, my faith absolutely saved me. And having that as my foundation saved me so, so much. But because the Bible literally says in Proverbs 18:1 that the person that breaks out of counsel is the one that makes poor decisions. Like, they break out of all sound judgment, because the one who isolates themselves breaks out of sound judgment. And this man purposely isolated me, and I got isolated myself from my sisters being gone from college, and I wasn't around friends anymore at this point. And so in isolation, your decision making is weakened. And that's what happened to me. Is I had no sounding board, no one speaking into this situation. And I felt too scared to tell anybody. I felt that I was too dirty, that it was too shameful, that people were going to judge me or unlove me, or, I mean, all the lies that the enemy had told me, I believed. And so I just kept digging and digging and digging until I got myself into a decision that I knew all along when I was making it. I was just like, this is not right. This is the worst thing I'm about to do. But I felt like there wasn't any other option. And there's more to that, of course, but he made me feel like there wasn't any other option, and I was too scared to tell other people. And so I made the decision, and that day I instantly was like, I made the worst mistake of my life.
Yeah.
But the Lord so graciously and kindly helped me get out of it, helped restore me, helped redeem me. We ended up getting annulment. For a while, it was not peaceful. Then eventually it became peaceful. We got in the same terms to just annul the whole marriage altogether. But it was crazy. It was crazy, needless to say. But God has used my story so much, just like the woman at the well, where, she feels so unrepairable or she's ashamed. She goes out of her way to hide and to isolate. And Jesus meets her at the well and gives her that living water that she's looking for. And then he's like, go and tell other people what I've done for you. And that is what I want to do with my story, is not hide it, not be ashamed from it, because the Lord has set me free, but instead use that story to now help other women in that same situation.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. And, I think it's so interesting because I walked through something very, very similar and at a very similar time as you. And the more that I talk to women, college is such a hard time. And I see that is a time where a lot of women are attacked. If you're a woman that, from a little girl, you've grown up in the faith, you have that foundation, college is a time where you kind of decide for yourself, like, I'm going to walk this out or I'm going to turn away from it. I'm going to choose to believe and live out what my parents have instilled in me, or I'm just going to say, that's a them thing. I'm going to maybe pray sometimes. I'm going to go to church with my parents when they want to go, when I'm home for the breaks, but I think it's so telling, and it's honestly smart tactic from the devil, right? Because if he can get us there, then he can have us for the rest of our lives. He can have our children and our marriage and everything. But how amazing that the grace of the Lord covered you in that, and he covered me in that, and he turned your story around, and that you're not hiding it, but you're bringing it in to the light. It's not allowing the darkness to cover you any longer.
Right. And for so long, the darkness did cover me. So, for so many years, I was condemned for it. I was shamed for it. People threw out labels like, if you're a Christian, why are you getting divorced? And why are you doing this? And why are you doing that? And there was just so much pressure on me that I felt like I have to hide this and isolate. And that's exactly how sin festers, is in secrecy. And so when you expose things and bring it into the light, there you will find freedom. And that is why I literally wrote this book, is for the age range of women that are navigating these struggles. You're in college, you're out of college, whatever season you're in. I wanted people to learn from my mistakes and then find out the best way to go about it through God's way and what God had for us all along. Because we were never meant to go through that much pain and shame and secrecy and all the things that the enemy throws at us. And again, what you were saying, when you're in college, you're so isolated. And so you don't have a ton of wise counsel speaking into you. You have a lot of peers your age who may not know how to give you the best counsel. And so it's exactly why I wrote the book, because there's so many young girls that I'm like, please listen for me. Like, I'm your bigger, older sister. I'm 30 now. I want you to avoid the things that I've done and find freedom.
Yeah. And I think that was one of my most favorite things when I was reading this through. It truly felt like I was just talking to a friend and a friend was giving me wisdom. It didn't feel like somebody talking down to me. I'm like, oh, well, I've gone through this, and if you're walking through that, you really shouldn't do that, and you should run as fast as you say what you need to say. You're like, listen, girl, turn away, come back to the promised land of God. He has better things for you, but you do it in a way that's so encouraging, and that, again, doesn't encourage people to just stay in the darkness, but it makes them want to kind of do the vulnerable thing and come into the light. And I love that. And the Lord wants marriage to be a beautiful thing for us, not something to where we're like, oh my gosh, and it's anxiety. And how you were talking about that day of, you were like, this was the worst decision of my life. Now you are in a relationship now, you're married now, correct? And so tell me how the Lord rewrote that and kind of restored you and blessed you moreover.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Yes. And so I think, in the journey, when you kind of feel like you have this scarlet, this scarlet letter on you, I just felt like for so many years, I believed the lie that, what man is going to choose me or love me because of my past.
Yeah.
And when I met my husband, I remember feeling so scared to tell him, where I was just like, when am I going to bring this up? I had it so built up in my head of, I'm so scared to tell him. And I remember on date 3, I just told him, and it literally did not even faze him. He was like, okay. And And I was
Right?
like, what? Like,
Give
you're
me a
not scared off?
reaction. Give me something.
Yeah, I was like, you're not scared off? And he was like, no. He's like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I still think you're amazing. And I was like, what? And so God really used my husband Caleb to heal me and heal the parts of me that I thought were unlovable or unpickable
Mm-hmm.
because past men had not chosen me because of my story.
Yep.
And so Caleb just so lovingly was like, I'm here for you. I love you. I want to be with you. And so he is the best thing ever. Our story was very unique and crazy, but God showed me over and over and over, like, this is your person. This is who I want for you. And so I've learned the contrast now of exactly what you were saying. Like, when you marry someone, it shouldn't be riddled with fear and anxiety and worry. It should fit. It should be comfortable. It should be easy. People
Mm-hmm.
around you should be championing you and
Yeah.
believing like this is
Celebrating.
good. This is something we want for you versus my last relationship. Those people were like, I don't know if this is the best for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been such a contrast of walking with God and walking in God's blessing versus walking in, this secret cursed relationship that God never meant for me anyway. And so it has been so beautiful and redemptive to walk in a relationship where it feels covered by God and covered by people. And that's the way I think it should be.
I love that so much for you. I want to ask you this. Did you feel like it was hard? Because these are two very stark differences, right? Like
Yeah.
our dream, like what the Lord wants for us. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is better than I could ask, think, or imagine, just like the Bible says. And then like
Yeah.
one of our biggest nightmares, right? Like our families are like, get away from them. This is like probably not the best for you. You know that it's bad. And we're just like digging a hole, right? But like when you came into a relationship that was so healthy, was it hard for you to accept that love and accept that that was a reality?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I mean, that was a big part of our journey was walking through that and me wondering, like, I think I had been so conditioned that a man was going to leave or not pick me or I
Mm-hmm.
had to change in order to earn his love. And when Caleb just kept staying and he kept loving me and showing up and coming back and being like, nope, I want to be with you. I want to be with you. And I just so believed the lie, like, I'm not worthy of this kind of love.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my friends, she shared the whole scripture of me of the book of like Hosea, where I felt like I was kind of that love story of like, why does this man keep picking me? Like, I'm not worthy of this. And then he just kept pursuing her over and over. And so Caleb really showed me the love that I deserved all along that I just didn't know I deserved. And so for a while, it was hard for me. It's like you kind of wanted to go back to previous toxicity or previous thing because it feels more comfortable and familiar. And so anytime something is unfamiliar, you're like, yeah, no, I don't want this. But God is
Right.
like, unfamiliar is not healthy. I want you out of that and into something healthier and better that I have for you. So trust me. And so when I looked at the character of my husband, not anything materialistic or superficial, but his character, that is what I fell in love with, where I was like, this is a man of God and this is who I want to marry because I know he will be faithful to me till the day I die. And that's what I wanted to marry instead over anything like superficial.
Oh, yeah, girl. I love that so much. And everything that you're saying is so giving me the book of Ruth, And I felt like the
Yeah.
Lord had brought me through that. I was like, what should I study next? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
flipping through. And I was just like, Ruth, okay, amazing. And it talks about how Naomi comes back and she's like, call me Mara, call me by my pain, because they had left the promised land. And she's like, the
Right.
Lord had turned his hand from me. I am full of pain, right? And I just got this visual of the Lord had turned his hand from me. Well, when we're in the promised land, we're right here, right? But then when we go out of the promised land, he didn't turn his hand, girl. You walked away, and you and I,
Right.
we both walked away. But when we walked back to what the will of God was for us, he blessed us moreover. And he blessed Naomi and he blessed Ruth. And then she got, restored tenfold over. And so I think it's so beautiful of like when we walk back into what the Lord has for us, we get to see those blessings. But as you're saying, it's like we don't have to live in that shame. And so I guess you're kind of saying like we can kind of debunk the myth of you have to be your perfect person when you meet your spouse.
Oh, completely. I do not believe that. I honestly really think that you do the best you can to work and to heal and to really navigate all your past and your struggles. Like when you meet your person, I always tell people like you want to be as healthy as possible because, as you get married, you start to realize that marriage exposes a lot of stuff in you. And you're like, oh, I didn't even know that was in there.
Right?
You're
like,
like,
I'm horrible.
oh,
Yeah.
I really stink at this.
Yeah.
So you really do want to work on gaining the fruit of the spirit before you get married. But a lot of the times, the Bible literally talks about how marriage is for sanctification, to make you holier. So there's going to be elements in you that you will not be able to be sanctified unless you have this spouse or a partner or a friend sharpening you, because the Bible says that iron sharpens iron. And so I always tell people, I'm like, get as healthy as possible, but know that when you get married, things are going to come out, and that's okay. Let the things come out, let things be exposed, let things be revealed, so that God can bring freedom to it. And also this person can sharpen you, because your spouse is supposed to make you look more like Christ. He's supposed to push you back towards Christ. And so inevitably things are going to come out, and that's okay. But when they get out, actually try to heal it and deal with it and make sure you're taking care of it, not just letting it fester into your marriage any further.
Right. And not letting it kind of go into the darkness, but bringing it into the light. And then on the other side of that too, of what you're saying is like, and then for us to be patient with our spouse, with their things that they have to go through. Yeah. I'm engaged to be married, and it is like one of the most rewarding and also hardest seasons ever, because I feel like you're kind of revealed of like, oh man, like I am a little bit selfish. This life isn't really just crazy for me anymore. Girl, literally, like, I'm kind of nuts, and for some reason he's still sticking around. Like, there's no other explanation than the Lord, And it's just so encouraging to me to hear you go through this. And then also one of my best friends who's walked through the engagement season and been in marriage for a couple of years, because I feel like there's such this narrative to Christian women of like, okay, be whole, and two is better than one. In order for that to happen, you have to be two whole people, right? But I think sometimes we mistranslate that to, oh, we have to be the most perfect person, because if not, the man is going to leave. If not, he's not going to love me like Christ. If I don't meet these standards, then I'm not going to get the fruits of a biblical marriage. And so I just think it's such a blessing, you sharing your story and sharing your wisdom, because so many people need to hear it, and so many people need to know the truth and be able to kind of walk in the truth and shed the light on that. I would love to know, like, as you were preparing for your wedding, which I am obsessed with your wedding colors. My wedding colors are green. So when I was looking up my bridesmaids colors, I was like, oh my gosh, looking on Pinterest. And then I was like, oh, I love this. I love the different colors. And then I saw it was you, and I was like,
oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. And so first of all, iconic. I love it. It was beautiful. But when you were preparing for your marriage for your wedding day, did you feel insecurity or like body image issues during that process at all?
Engagement season is probably the hardest season of your life, because it's like this weird holding place between we're dating, now we're becoming closer to one. We're not one yet. We're not in a covenant. So we still have to have boundaries. And then the enemy tries to create all this division, spiritual warfare. Yeah. He makes you mad at each other. There's petty little fights. And so it was probably one of the hardest seasons. And then you're having all these crazy hard conversations that you've never had before, where you're like, well, let's get into finance. Let's get more into sex. Let's talk about family boundaries. And you're really trying to get into it more. Hopefully you are. But I would say body image wasn't necessarily the insecurity. There were definitely elements of it, because of course, like, you want to feel your absolute best.
Right.
There were some times where I was like, oh my gosh, my stomach is more pudgier in this dress today. And now it's slim again. And now it's pudgy. And just trying to like release that of like, I don't need to look perfect on my wedding day. This isn't only about me. This is truly about us. This is about, our wedding day together in a covenant before the Lord. And so I do think I was trying to release that, but I think I had different struggles in engagement with friends and bridal party and family stuff. And so engagement season is very, very exposing as well.
Yeah. And it's hard if you have a big family or a lot of friends to just make everybody happy, because whatever decision that you're going to make, somebody is not going to love it, but I guess that's just another tip to becoming happy and healthy. You just have to make decisions, and
yes.
Yeah. So, what are some of the tools that we could use in our journey? Sometimes I think it's so overwhelming to look at all the different ways that we can become more happy and more healthy. We're talking physically, mentally, spiritually, in our soul. What are some ways and some tips of advice that you give to people to where they can kind of start out and not be completely overwhelmed?
Yeah, so I remember talking about this in the last chapter of my book because it is an advice book. So each chapter is covering a different topic, whether it's body image to career to decision making, friendships, dating, and they're all advice based. And so I remember talking in the end of the book, I think also in the habits chapter, where I was like, I'm sure this all sounds very overwhelming. You're like, where do I begin? Where do I start? I want to start my journey, but where? And I think my number one tip is I always just recommend people like just start super, super small.
Yeah.
Because even in our health journeys, say we're trying to lose weight or we're trying to get into their fitness journey, we make these drastic, crazy changes thinking that that's going to be sustainable when it's just not. And so you want to start extremely small where you can maintain that. That can be very consistent. And it's not something that you're just going to quit in a week. And so you can look at those 4 elements of your life, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and pick one thing that you maybe want to change or improve. So maybe it's like, okay, I want to go to sleep earlier. So maybe you say, okay, now I want to adjust my sleep schedule. I'm going to try to lay my book out before bed. I'm going to turn the TV off at 9:30 and I'm going to get in bed at 10 p.m. And then spiritually, okay, I want to read my Bible every day. I'm going to read a verse a day. It could be so small.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to improve my health. I want to start working out. Well, I'm going to start with a 15-minute walk every single day. Okay, mentally, I'm really, really struggling. Okay, maybe I write, every single day, one thing that I'm thankful for and one thing I'm struggling with, and then I pray about it. I think a lot of people think they need to do this, crazy, drastic, long list of all these things, and it's just not sustainable. And even if that's just picking one thing, I want to read the Bible every single day. I'm going to read one chapter a day, one verse a day. You just have to keep working on that. You're building that habit, building that muscle, creating that to be sustainable. And then until you feel like, okay, I've mastered this, I've got this down, you can either add on to it or you can add another habit. Or you can pair the two together. Say you've already mastered, I've already got Bible reading down, but now I want to go to bed earlier. Okay, so now I'm going to read my Bible in my bed. I'm going to set that alarm. I'm going to set that time. I'm going to read my Bible, and I'm going to get in bed at 10 p.m. every single night and pair the two to where you're building more habits together. And so I'm so big on habits. Honestly, the book from James Clear changed my life. So I really recommend that, and it really helped me in my habits book as well. So my number one advice is start small, let it be consistent, and then the more consistent it is, the more you can add on and improve on it.
I love it. I'm about to start right after this. I'm going to go make some goals because I'm ready.
Let's go.
I'm ready, girl. You've inspired me. I'm going to do it. Hey, to close, let's think of the reader for a second. Let's think of the people listening to this. What is one thing that you want to leave with them? What is your prayer for them? What is God's hope for them in becoming happy and healthy?
Absolutely. So, something I talk about in the book is knowing that becoming happy and healthy is not a finish line and it is not a destination. It will forever be a journey and there will be ebbs and flows. There's going to be some times where you're absolutely thriving. You're on the mountaintop. You're feeling your best self and you're feeling super close to God. And then sometimes you're just not on any of those things. You feel lackluster. You feel lukewarm. So knowing that this is a journey, because I am not here to preach perfectionism, I'm here to preach progress to people and me helping you get there. But the number one way that you're going to do that is you're going to start with your faith. And that is why I open up with chapter 1 as being faith as your foundation, because the more you read my book and the Bible, you'll see that God infiltrates every aspect of your life, whether that is career decision-making, body image, friendships, dating, so many different things in your life. God infiltrates all of them. And so when you start with God, you get serious with God. There is no better time to start than now with God. Take your faith seriously, and you will see how it transforms every aspect of your life. And so there's no better time to start than now, than getting serious with God. And that could just simply be a prayer of, God, I don't know where to start. I feel overwhelmed, but I want to know you. And so coming to God with a surrendered, open heart is the best breeding ground for God to work the best soil for God to work in your life. And so be surrendered and have an open, willing heart to learn from him, to seek him, and to know him.
I love it so much. Hey guys, make sure that you start right now. Go get Becoming Happy and Healthy wherever you buy books. You can also connect with Jeanine at her website, which is JeanineAmapola.com. And she also has a podcast called Happy and Healthy. So make sure you check her out. Thank you guys so much for joining us on Life Today Live. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe and share it with somebody you love. And we'll see you next time.
To believe him, to receive him, and to receive the healing from body, mind, and soul.